Hello, starting today with Saturn through houses, and I'm going to just do this generic video. The first one will be all about what is Saturn really all about. So Saturn is one of the most important planets in Vedic astrology, in the sense that it deals at our karma. So wherever Saturn is, it's basically where we're paying our karma to the world in our natal chart. Obviously, do always bear in mind that despite the fact that you're born with a certain placements, but actually every dashas are planetary periods which are very unique to Vedic astrology. Your chart changes, even though the underlying thing is your D1 or your natal chart, but really is on top of it during those years that that particular planet is ruling your life. You're doing more, you can read your chart from there, so this could change according to that. But this, obviously we know that the natal chart is literally the flavor of what we are. But I'm sure we all see that we definitely change every year when we are younger, and every decade or so we change dramatically as well as we work through our karmas. And some karmas, we work through and basically it's done, so it doesn't mean that we're going to be repeating those issues again and again. This is one of the most important things as well to know, is that for Saturn is very strong in the 7th house, because it's planet of community, other people, marriage, commitment. Therefore, if you have a difficult issues, difficult Saturn in your chart, it's really good to work on. I mean, if you have got a strong Venus, then that's fine. And also, if you've got strong Jupiter, that's very good too. But Venus and Saturn, really, they rule all the most important houses in the chart, which is 2nd house and 7th house of Venus, and 10th and 11th house of the natural zodiac are ruled by Saturn. So Saturn for us is the planet, we always look at it from Aries Ascendant. It rules 10th house of career, karma and status, and 11th house, which is house of gains, and house of elder sibling. So it's a wealth and work. For Venus is 2nd house of family, savings, values, self-love, and 7th house of relationships and working with the others. So when they get together, this is how relationships are built, basically, because if you've got a good Venus and good Saturn, you really work at it. And so if you're finding that in your chart, your Saturn is very strong and it holds you back, or it's very weak, when it's very weak, like a debilitated Saturn, it's really, particularly in the 1st or 7th house, it can be quite difficult, because the person only ever sees the lack. They can give up on things before even start it. Therefore, it's quite good to work on Saturn. Saturn is literally hard work, putting your back into it and getting results. And the moment you do it with Saturn never ever denies you anything, but it wants you to deliver, and it wants you to be consistent and persistent. So let's go through some of the things to do with Saturn. Saturn is monotony. It's routine. Responsibility is our duty, commitment, fear, worry, seriousness, actually having lack, feeling the lack for anything. Maturity, reliability is humanitarian. It's unhappiness, discipline. It likes fairness, really, in everything. Wherever it sits in our chart, that part of our life, we're always very hard on ourselves. And it's rules it's dry and it's stressful. It rules kind of laws of the land. Sometimes even the unspoken laws will be to do with Saturn. It's like planet of humbleness and integrity, really. It's rules and regulations. It's respected, respect and respecting others, basically. It's always seeing what is not done. So you could have a list, and person who's got a good Venus, they think, okay, I had 10 things on my list. I did 2. Excellent. I now deserve a cup of tea. And they go and treat themselves, and there's no guilt attached. Well, it's very different for Saturn. Saturn is always guilt-driven. So therefore, it's like, even if they did 2 jobs and they were massively busy and there were big jobs to do in a day, they is still hard on themselves that they didn't do the other 8. So their view of life is very much like glass half empty. But they are loyal, hardworking. As I said, they love a routine. They like everything to be just so. Steadfast. They that term, talk the talk, walk the walk. They probably even don't even talk, but they certainly walk the walk, because they're not really having Saturn on your first house. It kind of limits everything. It can, wherever it's sitting, it kind of contracts that. It also rules elderly people, sick or disabled people. It's longevity. It's also death, delays, isolation, community, and above everything else is service. So these are all the indications of Saturn. So what we do now, we'll go through and do it through the houses. Saturn is friendly with Venus, very good friends with Venus, and also with Mercury. And it also does pretty well with Ketu, but it's definitely not friendly with the Sun or the Moon, or even Mars, although Mars is neutral with Saturn. And Rahu as well. Rahu, Saturn are not good together either. So this is how you can see. So you can see that Saturn is going to do really well in own sign, rules Capricorn, and rules Motricona sign, which is like the head office sign. It's very strong. Is in the 11th house of the natural zodiac, which is house of kind of groups, networks, likes to be with other people and actually contributing to everything. And it's exalted in Libra and debilitated in Mars. Exalted in the sign of other people, marriage, committing, working with other people, and diplomacy. But sign of Aries, which is all about me, myself, and I, is not happy there, because obviously it's a sign of me being singular, and also sign of Mars, which is an enemy to it considers Mars as an enemy. And so we just want to kind of like, this is one of those things that when you have a weak Saturn in your chart, you really it's very hard to get a grip of life, and things for people will be seriously delayed, and people, like mothers and fathers, could start worrying about the child because they just feel as though they are not really grasping things in life and solidifying anything. And also it can make the child very worryful as well. So I find that when Saturn is in your first house, in your 7th house, it's your Atmakarka, or is sitting with your Ascendant Lord, the child, everything for the child will be delayed. They'll be more stressed than normal. They'll be very dutiful. They always worry. They have this fear. So as a mother, it's very important to just like have compassion for them, because these children are real humanitarian. If they are really looked after and nurtured, so they can actually there's that trust thing going on, then you do well and they do well too. And so don't literally, be aware that they are not sometimes, it could be that, I'm not saying this every person, it depends on the chart, but don't they feel the pain of anything, because obviously they feel as though if they didn't do very well in a test, or you know, they didn't do a job to the way their parents wanted to, they carry this terrible guilt, and they feel as though they let you and the family down, so they already suffer with a lot of guilt anyway. So it's really good when we are kind of, even with, if you have a partner who has like, or you know, children, siblings, friends and everything else, we just got to realize, you know, that's where they're coming from. It's really, really important. So anyway, let's talk about the Saturn through signs, through houses. Thank you. Saturn has special aspects. It's obviously where it's sitting. It always, like all other planet aspects, 7 houses away. It also has special aspects, which is 3rd house and 10 houses away. The house that it's actually 3 houses away, but you always count so if it was in the 1st house, so you count 1st, 2nd, 3rd. So 3rd house will be where you'll be putting the effort in. So 3rd house is away from where it's sitting, and then 10 houses away from it, which is where you're paying karma to the world for from Saturn's viewpoint. So it's not necessarily you know, for some people who've got like Saturn in the 5th house, is, you know, 10 houses from that is not going to be necessarily your work one, but nonetheless though, it's something that you're paying karma on the world too. Okay, let's make a start on this. Saturn in the 8th house. I'm just going to go through the indications of the 8th house, and as you know, it's a Dhisthana house, so it's a difficult house. It's also a hidden house, secretive house. And it is, in the natural zodiac, it's naturally ruled by Mars, so it's Scorpio, so there's a lot of hidden things. It's like very deep and dark, so we don't know everything about the 8th house, and we all have one. So whether it's Scorpio or not, doesn't matter, we still have one. And so it's it is actually, Saturn is a Karaka or significator of the 8th house. However, having said that, it doesn't, you know what it's like, they don't really do well when they are sitting in the house that they significate. So it's that's given for all of them. And it brings the energies of Saturn and Mars together. Even if it's not the same for you, you know, if it's, even if your 8th house, say, I don't know, is say Taurus, it's a little bit better, but it still has that connotations of Scorpio. And the other thing is as well that I just wanted to say, from there it will be aspecting, by 3rd aspect it will be aspecting your 10th house, 7th aspect will be on your 2nd house, and the 10th aspect on your 5th house. So from the 8th house, this is a Saturn that is aspecting really important signs, houses for your chart. You want to, and I'm talking about Saturn with no aspects, no conjunctions. However, you want to see if for your ascendant is a good planet, and also you also very much depends whether or not the what do you call it, the completely forgotten, the landlord or the kind of the house ruler, where, you know, the 8th house ruler for you. I've forgotten what they call it actually. Crikey, I've been in the sun too long today. Yeah, so the landlord for Saturn, whoever rules the house, is where it is and their condition. That's important. And also where Saturn goes in your D9. I find, because this is quite it can be a little bit difficult. So, but if in your D9 it goes like 9 places from the sign, not the house, the sign. So if, say for example, if whatever sign it's in, say if it's in Aries, so if it goes 9 signs away from it, which will be Sagittarius, in the D9, it's a little bit, it means that you really kind of consciously worked with it. Or if it goes, even if it goes 5 places, I think when they go 5 places or 9 places is the best thing in the D9. But anyway, just let's start. I mean, this is, you know, we have been given what we have been given, but we can navigate through life with intelligence and knowing all these things that we know. Anyway, so this is like very, very much unpredictable sign, is sacred, is transformative, full of ups and downs and sudden changes. It's all about accidents, surgeries, longevity, which that is definitely what Saturn gives you with this. It's about sex, scandal, control, I said secrets already, in-laws, taxes, spies, surveillance, assets after marriage, your in-laws obviously, and as I said before, secret enemies, astrology, psychology, self-help, changes, addictions, sexual addictions, death even, and it's like emotional entanglements and emotional things that hold you back too. Now, Saturn being the significator of the 8th house, when it sits in the 8th house, because it also makes the sign, makes everything, delays everything. So it just means that you are more likely to have a longer life. However, you want to have a longer life in a healthy way. So you want to look after your 6th house in order to then strengthen your 8th house. So if you are poor diet and everything, then it's not going to help, because from here, if Saturn particularly is really weak, it's actually looking at the 2nd house. 2nd house is everything that you eat or drink, or actually anything that you smoke too, and the words that you say. So it could be like, if it is debilitated and in difficult situation, the person will curse a lot, and they could just like have issues with eating or not eating and that kind of thing, which can impact their general health, impact their teeth and stuff, and well-being. So it's worth knowing that it's not just given that just because Saturn makes things, longer lasting or delays things, it's going to be always good. We have to take control of that. And so this is obviously the dignity of Saturn is everything. Absolutely everything, but this gives you some form of separation. So from there, obviously, this is sign of your in-laws, your partner's money. 2nd house is from 7th house, so it just means that your partner had like a very frugal, very cold upbringing. Your in-laws could also be the same way, but then also your family could be similar to that as well, because the situation it is. If obviously the dignity of Saturn is weak, so it could actually be because Saturn is in the 8th house. It could be like you were brought up in really you or your partner, were brought up in a situation where there was always a lot of fear, because it's 8th house of fear and sudden changes. There could have been like, say, somebody in your family could have been addicted, and there was all this uncertainty, so all this emotional turmoil, growing up, stuff like that. But certainly, money could have been quite tough to get and hold on to, particularly if Saturn is not in good condition. So obviously 8th house is a swift house because it's all about Mars, and now Saturn is sitting there as well, so it's got that kind of difficulty within it as well. But once you start working with it and really dig deep and research it, because it's house of research, you can really come up really nicely with this. But it just means so much that you have to put in, so much effort, because the effort that you put in is going to empower and strengthen your 10th house. Otherwise there'd be chopping changes in your job, there'd be like sudden upheavals at work. It could also be like, obviously 8th house is impacting the 10th house. It could be a job that's all to do with that kind of thing. So it could be the kind of thing that they do. Say, for example, it could be like sex industry, or it could be I don't know, like alcohol. There's some sort of secret. There could be a spy. There could be like a secret agent, private investigator, if you think, so there's all those things. Or there could also be surveillance products and things that they put up. Don't like things like that, do we? But, that kind of, dark web, that sort of thing could be part of this as well. And so you Yeah, so there could also be something secret about your partner's money or in-laws money, in-laws situation that you can't really put your finger on it. There's something that's like a little bit like a bit of a mystery because this thing. It could also be, if it's in really good condition, that your job is all to do, maybe you deal with children who've been traumatized in some way because it aspects the 5th house, but it's 10th aspect. And social, look after them. Maybe they are people who are going to safe houses and they are being looked after. So it can really have a positive thing as well. It's not always bad, but obviously you want to look at everything. They could deal also with money because it's aspect in the 2nd house, 10th house and 5th house, and investments and things for people. It could be that there's secret offshore things that they deal with, stash away people's taxes so they don't pay tax. So it could be a little bit that kind of thing. They could also be working because it's like 8th house natural zodiac, it brings Saturn and Mars together. So it could be mining, caving, that kind of thing, working with metals, working in the steel industry or building industry too, where the jobs can be a little bit up and down, so money is a bit up and down, that kind of thing. And or they could also be pharmaceuticals, because 8th house is pharmaceuticals and all those poisons and medical things. It could be surgery, it could be a funeral director, emergency worker, like paramedic or fire rescue, something like that. And also it could also be somebody who deals with secret cults as well. So it could just be, if it's in really poor condition, it could be like people who deal with really Ouija board, odd things, like that. But on the positive side as well, it could be somebody who helps through astrology, help others, uplift them, advises people too. So it all really, really depends, and it really depends then how it goes. If it goes like 12 houses, from where it is in the D9 or more difficult situation, then that can be a little bit like scandalous, that kind of thing too. So it could be like, as I said, jobs that are hidden, that kind of thing. And like healers, Reiki workers, people who deal with people who go in witness protection, that sort of thing can also be in there too, and definitely can have something to do with like young people who have really been suffering through some kind of, because it is 8th house, all those really hidden stuff that can happen, and they've been in some way abused. That can also be like they're helping them, or they've created that as well. So it could be like either or. So really sorry, I don't want to, but it is astrology, so we need to know everything. It could also be somebody who is in some form of education, but it could also cut your education too, because it's 8th house, and from 8th house aspect in, so education can suffer. If you're dealing with stock investments and things like that, that could also have, it can either be really good or really bad. So it could be massively unpredictable. It could also be that behind the scenes they're helping politicians and people in power too, because the 5th house things. And generally it could be like some form of secret education thing too. But the thing is though, you have to understand, so because there's aspect in the 5th house, so it could be that they don't really have a good relationship with their own children, or their children's education could suffer because of their ups and downs in the money house too. And or they could be like estranged from their family, from their children, because of the secret job that they do, because they could be quite absent for times if they're like in the Secret Service or anything like that. So this can be what some of the things that's going on. Obviously you can see that they might have had quite a dry, cold family upbringing, the early years could have been quite tough on them, quite, you know, maybe the whole family had that situation, not necessarily just yourself, but because also it's aspect in the second house, themselves, their family, and also the in-laws and the partner. There's like this money issue thing going on because it's Saturn now impacting 8th house and impacting the second house and 5th house, which is like all those kind of enjoyment and passion, romance, that kind of thing. It's like very up and down, and they could like go on a date and then not really contact the person, so the person could be thinking, what happened there? I thought it really went well, because it's just that unpredictability going on all the time. So this is how I see it. So the best, but I think because of the health things, stuff like that, so it's very important with your cars and things like that to just make sure, because it makes person accident prone. So anything to do with 8th house, so I would always say make sure your car is in good order before you go out, and also look after your health, what you eat, and your just generally 6th house, which is all about good way of looking after yourself, eating and sleeping and resting and good food stuff. So that will actually then take care of the 8th house. You can't just think that I've got 8th house Saturn and all is good. It does depend obviously on the dignity too, and it depends if it's a good planet for your ascendant. Right, let's have a look at the ascendants now. For Aries ascendant is exactly as we said in the previous little video, you know, a few minutes. So it's going to be like 11th and 10th ruler in the 8th house. So Saturn rules 10th and 11th, and it's now in the 8th house. So it is actually, by, you know, so it's unfriendly sign, but it is aspecting also, the 11th house ruler is aspecting the second house. So there could be gains. They could also work for a bank, banking or finance or economist or something like that. And there could be all these secret things about the job too that they can't reveal to the general public or even their own family. But generally speaking, you know, it could just be that obviously things are secret investments, secret stashes of money. It could be definitely something secretive about their in-laws or their partner, or they could have met them secretly and they got, or them. It could also be you and your partner have got some stash of money secretly put away as well. So it's not necessarily, but they will know how to avoid paying taxes and things like that, these people, because it's literally Saturn will do hours and hours of research just to get the answer. So they'd be very, very keen to keep that going. And also 3 houses from 8th house is its own sign, is Saturn's own sign. So it really looks after the puts after the 10th house, Capricorn, and puts a lot of effort into it, gets all the skills, constantly gets skills, and you know, they just do everything that they can, put that effort and will and hard work into getting the things done for their work. And their job could be very changeable. They could also wear a lot of different hats during the day to get the job done. But in terms of investments and everything, Southern investments, that could be because that very much reason. So they do all this wheeling and dealing with investments and things like that, and working with banks, secret stuff, and that's how it goes. Oh my goodness, I just did a half an hour video and it didn't record. And I've had that all this week. Mercury retrograde is really playing me up. Anyway, so let's start with I've just done Aries, Celestial, Taurus now, and I'm just going to do tiny little videos because otherwise I have to go through them again, and it's just like really gets the wind out of you, doesn't it? Anyway, so for Taurus ascending, Saturn is 9th and 10th house ruler, and it's now in the 8th house, which is like a neutral sign. And this doesn't spoil the any of the yogas. So it's still 9th house ruler aspecting is aspecting the second house from the 8th house, and this 10th house ruler aspecting the second house. And so 9th house ruler second house is going to be lovely done yoga. So you know that they because also through work and sheer hard work, you know, because they're going to put a lot of effort into that. And the from the 8th house, which is Sagittarius, the aspect in own sign, mortal cone sign Aquarius, so they put lots of effort, gain lots of skills in order to change their situation, transform their work, and that really pays off, gives them money. And from there also, it's having the 2nd house Saturn there, you know, it just means that the whole family, there could be some changes in the situation, there could be like they have a fallout and everything, but nonetheless though, they're quite united in that sense. And they could be like working with father as well in their job, or the families involved in the work that they do. There could be like, say for example, funeral directors, or like they teach their codes, or they teach I don't know, some form of tax or something like that. But nonetheless though, it could be that this is something, a family work, and they've done it previously with the family. And from there obviously it's aspect in the 5th house too, which is the 10th aspect of Saturn is going to be Virgo. So you know that having children can create a little bit of debt for them, because it's the natural 6th house of the zodiac. So any investments or anything like that, just be very, very cautious. They could be teachers though at the secondary schools, or you know, or even be a professor or something at university, just purely because of and they could teach theology or something like that. In their job, and they you know, try really hard to get the good information to give them, because their 2nd aspect is on you know, speaking, all the sort of they have nice way of actually speaking clearly, and just making it kind of very limited you know, speaker that doesn't speak very much, but what they give, information that they give, is of value, if you like. But this is quite good in the sense that it's aspect in the 5th house, and it's your Karaka planet, 10th house ruler aspect in the 5th house, a lovely Raj Yoga there going on, and obviously 9th house ruler aspect in the 2nd house, so that's nice too. And there's no issues with that. There could be ups and downs in their work, or their education can actually bring some losses and things, but they will be able to deal with it quite well. For Gemini Ascendant. For Gemini Ascendant, this is going to be like your 8th and 9th house ruler in the 8th house. Nice and strong, 8th house own sign. So this is going to be a person who, through changes, their work does get elevated. Saturn's 8th house on to the 10th, from the 8th house aspect in the 10th house, is really good for work. So this is going to be like, they're always looking for skills, particularly in Capricorn, skills, learning, getting the right information, working with the right people to elevate themselves at work. They really try to do that. And also, this is also 9th house ruler in that aspect in the 10th house, so really good for work. Fantastic Raj Yoga. It's also from there, the 9th house ruler is aspect in the 2nd house, which is Cancer, so that's lovely in terms of earning money. But however, you know, the family could have had like some forms of issues, you know, that because obviously Cancer, whenever it's aspected by Saturn, or Saturn sitting there, it's a sensitive sign. So when you have a dry cold, you know, so there could be like emotional issues that they've had with the immediate family, or their mum, or you know, because obviously it's Cancer. Just the early years could have been a little bit difficult for them. Their in-laws are upwardly mobile, very successful people, and obviously they got certain things about them that are quite secret, stash of money or something like that. From there also, it's aspect in the 5th house. So for Gemini Ascendant, 5th house will be where Saturn is exalted. So having children, going in politics, being an advisor, an educator, that kind of thing, or even like you know, talking at work, and because 2nd house of speech. So yeah, so it's really good in that sense. It's going to be like 9th house ruler aspect into you know, the 10th the fifth house as well. So it's good. The whole family is highly educated. They really enjoy their children studying, education, and investments and things like that will be good for these people. And they probably deal with like banking, maybe, or they. They not banking, sorry, the investments and stocks and that kind of thing, maybe like assets, like crypto and things like that, and they'll probably enjoy that. But they could be quite good with children. They just have that knack of like making sure with their children have a really good fun time. They appreciate that, and they're probably quite good at romance, whereas Saturn normally isn't, but they will also are good at committing to that romantic endeavor as well. Okay, so my computer's playing up today. Mercury retrograde. I don't know how many times I've tried to do this video, so let's try again. So going to do Cancer Ascendant now. I'm just going to share this because I need to look at a chart. It's very frustrating, all this. Anyway, let's do okay, so for Cancer Ascendant. Oh, as it happens, Saturn is in the eighth house. So for Cancer Ascendant, when Saturn is in the eighth house, this is like seventh and eighth house ruler. When it goes in the eighth house, Saturn will be in mortal cone sign, nice and strong. It does mean that obviously Saturn will be strong, but it's seventh house ruler in the eighth house. There could be like a chance of a divorce or some form of scandal, that kind of thing. And also, you can see that the nature of the in-laws, they will be quite like, they have really important friends groups, but obviously there's something secret about them that you can't put your finger on. And then from there, Saturn from the eighth house is aspecting the 10th house, which is Aries. And obviously this is going to be a sign that Saturn is not, Saturn is debilitated. So, but however, Saturn's aspect onto the 10th house is always good. So this person could be like secret advisor to a politician. It could be like an emergency officer. It could be a paramedic, or like the ambulance, helicopters and things like that. So that form of thing, work in the emergency department of the hospital. There could definitely be a medic. They could be a work on maternity actually, or gynecology or something like that, particularly if it's in Barani. If Saturn is in middle degrees of Aquarius, then it could be that they're either the early part. Ashwini could be like a fire rescue, police, that kind of thing, or there could be like secret service, surveillance, that kind of stuff. In the middle of the sign when Bharani, if the degree is like in the middle of Aquarius, then it could just be like somebody who's gynecology and maternity department, births of children and stuff like that. C-sections, or they could also be like a nurse, emergency nurse, that kind of thing. There are obviously, from this aspect in the second house, so that the family is going to be respectful, respected and quite, they looked up to a family of integrity, but they're obviously not very close to them because Saturn separates you from the family. Or is also that the family is they feel as though they don't feel good enough for the family, because Sun made Saturn feel like that. This was Saturn is Sun's son, and and he overlooked him. So it could be that kind of thing. It's more in their own mind that they feel so they're not good enough for their own family, whereas they could probably be much more at ease with their in-laws, really. And also aspecting the by the 10th aspect in the 5th house. So it could be that they have a child out of marriage, or the child comes suddenly, or they suddenly get pregnant, that kind of thing. But there could be some losses or something to do with children, education, sudden breaks, that sort of stuff going on too. And definitely wouldn't really would definitely say, just because the fifth house is Scorpio, investments, just be very, very careful. And also because the second house of money is also not very good sign for Saturn to be aspecting. But, you know, this is also the seventh house ruler, so it doesn't really spoil, you know, the eighth house doesn't spoil yogas, but generally speaking, though, it's, you know, it is like seventh house ruler aspect in the fifth house, so that's the Raj Yoga. For Leo ascendant, now for you, just going to just make sure I'm recording. Oh dear, because I've had so many problems, I don't want to. Oh dear. Right, so let's go to the next ascendant. Leo ascendant, for you, Saturn is sixth and seventh house ruler. So you know that you or your partner could both be very service-oriented, hardworking people. When your sixth house is Capricorn, you know, that person is hard worker. They're really career-minded, very ambitious. When they're in the eighth house, is obviously there could be like problems, arguments with the partner, and that could create a divorce for sure, you know, because it's like a house of litigation and loss now. Now it's gone into house of loss, and the actual eighth house is also the natural 12th house of the zodiac. So there's things about they're either not very close to the in-laws, or you know, their in-laws definitely got some secrets and hidden things going on there. And from there also is aspect in the second house, which is Virgo, and so you can see that their own family is quite hardworking people, practical, service-oriented people. But having said that, they feel as if the family is quite critical, and they probably not that close to them. Saturn is obviously sitting in like a neutral sign as well. It's neutral towards Sagittarius, towards Jupiter, so it's not too bad. From there also, it's aspect in the fifth house, which is Sagittarius. So, you know, learning and just educating, you know, because they could be like, this is the natural ninth house of the zodiac. So the education of the children is important to them, for them to have good values. The belief system, the same as themselves, is very important, key to that. And generally they like the child to be quite cultured, quite respectful. And so their own education was really important to them too. From there also, now Saturn is also aspecting what would be 10th house. So the 10th house is going to be Taurus. And, you know, that you can see that Saturn's aspect there is going to be a friendly sign to Saturn. And this is Saturn rules for, you know, the 6th and 7th house ruling. So you know that they are really hardworking. Their job could be to do with, like, they could be in hospitality. They could also be in medical work as well, where they're actually doing surgery and doing cosmetic surgery even, you know, that kind of stuff. But they could also be like a pediatrician, or work with newborn you know, emergency surgeries and things like that, or emergency unit, being in that kind of thing, you know, something to do with like police, even that kind of thing. But more, I would see that as somebody to do with like working with children, maybe, in that sense. Or they could just be an educator, where they just they teach young children, teenagers, that kind of thing. Teacher maybe something such as, for example, maybe religious studies, classics, that kind of stuff. Now I would say, because Saturn for them rules 6th and 7th house, obviously that being in the 8th house creates a vibrant Raj Yoga. So in that sense, is really good. It's also the 7th house ruler aspect in the 5th house, which is a Raj Yoga. That's good too. So these people will work hard and go through some ups and downs in their work, in their life. You know, maybe they wanted a child and it takes a long time for it to happen, or that, you know, they really have to put a lot of effort into it, but the results will be good through difficulties and everything. They'll be triumphant. For Virgo ascendant, 8th house Saturn will be Saturn in debilitation sign. Saturn for them is 5th and 6th house ruler in the 8th house. So, that Saturn will find it quite difficult, changes, ups and downs of life, any transformation. They just they don't deal with it very well. And this will be a really weak Saturn aspect in the 10th house. So their jobs can be full of ups and downs, and it just makes them feel quite emotionally exhausted. And because they just can't, when Saturn, a weak Saturn just means that they can't be, consistent. And Saturn is about being reliable, being consistent, being of service, and they want to be of service, but they just it's ups and downs and all of that. Or they could be that they just generally work with in social services with children whose their situation is up and down. They just in a home, be with foster parents, that kind of stuff. And so that kind of thing. But they, the more skills that they learn, the better their job it could be. It could also be that they are in tech, working with information technology, with Saturn aspect in Gemini, and so their job the more effort they might be in research as well, and the more they put effort into it, the better it becomes. From there, obviously, is aspect in the 2nd house, so their own family could be very nice, sort of quite hospitable, quite sociable family, very sort of home loving, that kind of thing, because obviously it's an exaltation sign for Saturn, it's Libra. But they probably find it a little bit at a loss with their own sort of in-laws. Maybe they feel as though they're not good enough, that kind of thing. So they feel a little bit like, but having said that, the more they put, effort they put into their work, they can have more money, and then that will just make them feel as the more valued generally with their own family, themselves, and their in-laws too. From there, Saturn is also aspect in the 5th house, which is going to be own sign. So this is Saturn's aspect on Capricorn. So they, that even though there'll be changes in their education, their children's education, there'll be some losses and things like that, they will be triumphant in the end, and they climb the ladder of success. And their children will be high achievers in the end anyway. So, but this could be also that they teach young children, they're educators as well. And then for, if we go to Libra, for Libra, Saturn is a very important planet, rules 4th and 5th house. When he goes in the 8th house, will be in Taurus. Now, Taurus Saturn is a little bit difficult because this is the natural 2nd house of the zodiac. When Saturn is there, it just means that it kind of stops the money a little bit. But it will, it will take a long time, but you have to really work at having the money and the savings. But anyway, so that the in-laws will be like a wonderful, warm family, and they probably have got money, they've got good values and things like that. They're quite traditional family, particularly Saturn going in there. From there is also aspect in the 2nd house. So their own family, there could be some secrets, some scandals, things that they don't know. Maybe they're hiding their money, that sort of stuff. But the situation with their own family will not be very close. From there also is aspect in the 10th house, which is going to be Cancer. So their job could be to do with maternity work, working with, it could be like, looking after people who are homeless, or people, mothers who've suffered, they've had, sexually abused women, that kind of thing, or maybe even children who've had some form of abuse as well. But generally speaking, that could be the job. There could also be in medical system, generally speaking, to do with, because this Ashlesha big part of Cancer is all about poisons, so that could be to do with that. Or it can also be alcohol too. So it's not necessarily always going to be like, milk or anything like that. The input share would be milk, dairy products, that sort of thing, nurturing children. Anyway, from there, obviously, is aspect in the 10th house, elevating the 10th house. But obviously it's aspect in Cancer, so this person will be really emotionally attached to the job. So they will be the sort of people that if they've looked after a patient or somebody at work, who they would really feel it. They just they take their work home, if you like. Emotional connection. From there, obviously, is also aspect in the 5th house as well, and 5th house will be Aquarius. So it just means that, generally speaking, education, even though they might have some changes, but it would have been for the good. They might suddenly become pregnant, but it would be for the good. That kind of thing could be the theme. And then if we go for Scorpio ascendants, actually, let me just do this. That would probably help me as well. Scorpio ascendant, when Saturn rules 3rd and 4th house, and is obviously not a friendly planet to your ascendant. Now, when it actually goes into the 8th house, Saturn will be in Gemini. So this is like, there could be like issues with mom, or issues with family or siblings. 1 minute you're talking, next minute you're not talking. It could also be a family that constantly on the move. 3rd house is 12 houses from the 4th house. So constantly the family has had to move, or you move in the family because of your job, that kind of thing. Obviously, from there is aspect in. It's a friendly sign to Saturn. So the changes, once once you settle into them, it'll be fine. You kind of cope pretty well. It's aspect in the 10th house from there, which is Leo. So you know that these people are working either for politicians or for the government, some form of job like that. And it could be a secret thing. So they could be like secret, stashes of money for rich people, wealthy people. They're just stashing it away. They're getting the information and researching and making sure they avoid paying taxes, that kind of thing. So those are the jobs that they could be working for. And then from there, it's also aspect in the 2nd house, which is Sagittarius. So the family could be quite traditional, quite religious, well-traveled, cultured family. And it's neutral sign, so it could be that the relationship with their own parents will be just mediocre as well, the same as with the in-laws, not too bad, not that many issues really. But obviously Saturn can also separate you from everything, and from there also 8th house Saturn will be aspect in what will be like 5th house Pisces. So the children, they could have the children when they're abroad, or they could be working in the labs, things like that as well. So, or the children could they could have no contact with children, because this is the natural 12th house of the zodiac, where there is like the 8th house, when the family separated and everything, then maybe the children, you didn't have much contact with them. If you're a man or for a woman, that could be like you could have been quite poorly because it's the 12th house, so the 5th house there. So these people, I'll probably say, don't try and invest money in anything, because your 5th house is natural 12th house of the zodiac. So investments and stock market trading will not be great for you. But they could be doing that secretly for work, for the people that they're with, working for. And then for Scorpius, for Sagittarius ascendant, it gets very confusing this, because I've done this recording so many times. For Sagittarius ascendant, when Saturn is in the 8th house, Saturn is in Cancer. So this is straight away is going to be difficult, because this is such a soft sign, and when you have Saturn sitting there, it's going to be quite difficult. But there's going to be changes in generally changes will come with like this emotional baggage, and it will be difficult for them to have any form of change. And from those aspects in the second house, I'm protecting the second house, which is Capricorn. So the family is quite successful, and family could possibly have money because of that. But their own in-laws, because Cancer is quite a fast-moving sign, because the ruler is fast-moving. Their joint asset and also their in-laws' assets up and down. So they could just like either be good or bad. So there's sudden changes all the time. From there is aspect in the 10th house. This is now second and third house ruler aspect in the 10th house. So, putting effort into their work and accepting the changes and stuff like that goes with work and the service that they do. They're probably service-oriented, work for social services or with women and young teenagers, things like that. But, they will be triumphant with that, really. They literally, they're very good. They're hard workers, because Virgo is their 10th house. So it is probably something for the betterment of the people, really, of the community. And the third house as well. So it's like, that they will just like be doing lots of reading and getting constantly updating their skills and everything for the job that they do. And then also aspects of fifth house from there, which is a sign that Saturn is actually debilitated in Aries. So they could have problems having children, or they could suddenly get pregnant, and also it could be like slightly scandalous as well, because they had a bit of romance and the person got, so just got to be careful with that. But there could be some issues like with investments. Education could be like up and down with that, and that can create issues with the family. The family can be quite upset about that kind of thing. So definitely wouldn't invest in things that are just uncertain, because just the situation of Saturn being in Cancer and not being a good planet for Sagittarius. Then for Capricorn, this is the first and second house ruler. When he goes in the 8th house, it'll be Saturn in Leo. Not very good, situation for Saturn in enemy sign. So you just like everything that they do, they work really hard. They're trying to do the right thing by their family, but it's there's some losses there, and but from there, everything that they do, all the effort and energy that they put into their 10th house will be triumphant, because the 10th house is where Saturn is exalted. All that sheer hard work, doing the research, and means that they're working with people who are socially skilled. They're very harmonious people, diplomatic people. They probably work with diplomats and people who are also politicians and quite important people, judges, lawyers, and they could just be dealing with taxes for them, or some sort of secret stashes anyway. But also from there is aspect in the 5th house, and 5th house for Capricorn is going to be the Taurus. So this is like literally second house, first house ruler aspect in the 10th house. So it's a Raja Yoga. It's also the second house ruler aspect in the 5th house. So it's a Dhan Yoga. So through all the changes, ups and downs and transformation and all of that, they will literally gain success and gain money as well through that. Literally, they could probably deal with taxes and their job. They earn good money through that. Then for Aquarius ascendant, this is 12th and first house ruler in the 8th house. So for them, Saturn is going to be in Virgo. So 12th house ruler in the 8th house. So you know that they're going to have some addictions, some losses, expenses, that kind of thing. And through that, they're going to be absolutely triumphant. The more they work at it, the more they work at their diet and looking after themselves, the better they become, because it's natural 6th house of the zodiac. From there is aspect in the 10th house. their job is probably something that is very secretive, for sure. You know, they could be like surveillance, security, secret service. They could definitely be in something such as, for example, the police, military, you know, anything like that. Definitely private detective even. So this is for Aquarius ascendant. This aspects also the fifth house for them, which will be Gemini. So this is they'll be really good at researching all the information, get all the facts, get all the skills to betterment their job. They could definitely have some stashes of money in, you know, offshore accounts and things like that, but there will be some losses, so they got to be careful, because this is, although it's like first house ruler aspect in the fifth house, there will be some losses. So but through sheer hard work and energy and effort they put into everything, they will be triumphant. And then we have for Pisces ascendant, when you have, let's go, I keep forgetting to do this, I don't know how many, it's taken me like 3 hours to do this video. So for you, Saturn rules 11th and 12th house. When it goes into the 8th house, again, another one that's quite difficult too. And this will be the people that just got to be careful, because they gain and they lose. They gain and lose. But there is a Viparit Raj Yoga going on there. So with time, things will definitely get better, because 11th house is also Upachaya house. But anyway, for them, Saturn will be exalted. So it's like all the sort of ups and downs and everything, that turmoil that they go through, and they will be really triumphant. This will be a really strong Saturn aspect in the 10th house, which is sign of Sagittarius. So all of that research, all of that, you know, trying to work in with others and be like of service to the others. They can be really good teachers, teach children maybe theology, religious studies, classics, history, and they could also travel quite a lot with their job as well. Job could be changing regularly, or they could be one of these people who are teachers but they just like go to different schools and teach, you know, like, or they could go on secondments and things like that. From there, obviously Saturn in the 8th house is going to be aspecting second house, which is Aries. So obviously, you know, that there is like issues with their own families where they feel misunderstood with their own family, and there is like they don't gain any sort of they can't save. Actually, saving for these people will be difficult, even though they could do, you know, they can succeed really well at their job and everything else, and with time they can really work on their own family and savings. But initially, the early years, probably till Saturn really matures, it will be quite difficult. Then for it's also aspect in the 5th house, so it just means that they're emotionally attached to their children. There's like you know, this is Cancer, so they just, you know, they could like be some form of loss of a child, or suddenly get pregnant, and that's that kind of thing. And if basically 11th house ruler, you know, aspect in the 5th house, so in the long run it will all work out fine in that sense. But yeah, but you know, they just really emotionally attached to their own children, love their kids, and they bring them a lot of joy. But you know, the children, they could be a little bit strict on the children. The children could be upset because of that, because it's, you know, Saturn's aspect onto the 5th house, which is quite cold. So they want, you know, they're trying to do the right thing by them, but they could be a little bit too strict and to limit the child's creativity, really. That's what I would say. But yeah, it's generally speaking, it's changes and everything else really good for these people. They really gain from it, and definitely going through the turmoils of life, they just can really make themselves very empowered in that sense. So that's it from me. You know, sorry if I sounded a little bit exhausted. Everything was a bit tiring today because of the constantly having to record. See you soon. Thank you.